The first time I saw her, I told myself it was exhaustion. The second time, someone else described her in perfect detail. And that's when I realized whatever we saw in those woods had been watching us long before we noticed it. My name is Daniel Mercer, and for several years I worked private security contracts across northern Canada. Most of the work involved long nights, remote terrain, and hours of silence broken only by wind or the sound of your own boots in the dirt. You learn quickly how to separate imagination from reality out there. If you don't, the isolation will get to you. At least, that's what I believed before the Birch Road assignment. The job itself wasn't unusual. A survey company had reported signs of trespassing and equipment theft near an abandoned logging route about 40 kilometers outside Thompson, Manitoba. The area hadn't been used in years. The road itself barely existed anymore, just a thin scar cutting through miles of forest. Locals avoided it after dark. Nobody gave a clear reason why. They would just shrug, laugh, and change the subject. There were 6 of us assigned to escort the surveyors through the area overnight. The plan was simple: move in after sunset, check a series of marked locations, and reach extraction before sunrise. Easy work, routine. I took rear position, something I preferred. The man at the back notices things others miss. The night was unusually bright. A near full moon hung above the tree line, turning the frost-covered ground silver. Visibility was good enough that shadows stretched long between the trees, making the forest feel deeper than it actually was. We had covered nearly 9 kilometers without incident when I first noticed it. A sound behind us. Not loud, just the faint shift of branches. Slow movement, something keeping pace. I stopped walking. Ahead of me, Carter, second to last in the line, froze at the same time. He turned slightly, eyes scanning the darkness behind us. He'd heard it too. We waited. The sound stopped. Nothing moved. No wind. No animals. Just silence pressing against our ears. After a minute, we moved again. So did the sound. That continued for nearly 10 minutes. Movement when we moved, silence when we stopped. Eventually, it faded completely, and we convinced ourselves it had been wildlife. Deer, maybe, moose. The woods were full of them. Still, the feeling lingered. The sense of being observed. We pushed forward toward an old orchard that sat along the edge of the logging route. Decades earlier, a small settlement had existed there before being abandoned. Only the trees remained, growing in uneven rows, twisted and pale under the moonlight. The others moved ahead while I paused near the entrance, scanning the tree line one last time. That's when I heard it. A child laughing, soft, close, not echoing, directional. I turned slowly toward the sound. One of the birch trees beside me caught my attention. The bark had peeled away in strange patterns, forming dark knots and pale shapes. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Then the shape blinked. A little girl's face emerged from the bark as if it had always been there, hidden in plain sight. Her expression wasn't angry or threatening. She looked happy, curious. She raised one small hand and waved. The sound of her giggling came again, quiet and breathy. And then she was gone. The tree was just a tree again. I don't remember deciding to move. I only remember suddenly walking faster, catching up to the team, forcing myself not to look back. I told myself it was fatigue, stress, shadows, anything logical. I said nothing. We reached extraction before dawn, and the night became just another story to laugh about. Carter and I got teased for stopping the group earlier over ghost noises. I laughed along with everyone else. but I avoided thinking about the orchard. 2 weeks later, I was reassigned to assist another team clearing old survey equipment further south. I was relieved not to be returning to Birch Road. When I got back to base, the others had already returned from another patrol. Everyone was joking, except Carter. He barely spoke that night. When someone mentioned going back to Birch Road, he snapped and left the room. That wasn't like him. A few days later, we were alone during equipment checks when he finally spoke. He didn't look at me when he asked, "What did you see in the orchard?" I shrugged, pretending not to understand. He nodded slowly, like he expected that answer. Then he said quietly, "She was inside the tree, wasn't she?" The air felt suddenly cold. He described her exactly. The smile, the wave, the laughter. Every detail matched what I'd seen. Neither of us had mentioned it before that moment. Neither of us had any explanation. Later, one of the local drivers told us something we hadn't known. Years ago, before the logging road closed, a winter fire destroyed several homes near that orchard. Some people fled into the forest during the chaos. A few children were never found. Trees, he said, started growing strangely after that. I left Northern Contracts the following spring, but even now, years later, I avoid looking too closely at trees when I walk alone at night. Because the part that still bothers me isn't that she appeared, it's that she looked relieved when we noticed her, like she'd been waiting. The dream started before anything else happened, and that's the part that still bothers me, because it felt less like a nightmare and more like a warning. I woke up, choking on air, drenched in sweat, convinced someone was inside my house. In the dream, I had been running. I didn't know from who, only that something was chasing me. I remember jumping out of the back of a van onto wet pavement, a rope burning in my hands as I pulled it behind me. Somehow, I knew the other end was tied to the person trying to kill me. When I reached my front door, I slammed it shut, tied the rope around the handle, and locked every door and window in the house. I called emergency services, but the operator's voice sounded distant, distorted. She kept repeating that no one could come, that everyone was busy. Then the rope went slack. Cut. The house erupted with noise all at once, kettles screaming, television blaring, taps running, footsteps above me. I looked toward the staircase just as someone began walking down, slowly, deliberately. I never saw their face. I woke up screaming before they reached the bottom. The strange thing is, at the time, I thought the dream was the worst part of that week. It wasn't. 4 days earlier, just before Christmas, my friend Liam and I were driving back from university after our final exams. Traffic in East London was heavy, the streets wet from freezing rain. I slowed to a stop at a red light near a large intersection. Cars lined up ahead of us. The impact came out of nowhere. Tires screeched behind us, then metal slammed into the rear corner of my car hard enough to jolt us forward. Nobody was hurt, thankfully. Just another winter accident. We pulled over, exchanged details, and stepped out to take photos for insurance. I remember checking the road carefully before stepping into the outer lane to take a picture of both cars and the intersection. There was plenty of distance. No cars close enough to matter. Liam called me back to open the boot so he could grab a pen and paper. I stepped away from the lane. A second later, a car flew past exactly where I'd been standing, the driver staring at our accident instead of the road. He drifted fully into the lane at nearly 70 kilometers an hour. If I hadn't moved when I did, he would have hit me head on. We laughed it off afterward. Bad timing, that's all. Or so I thought. 2 days later, we went paintballing with a group of friends in North London. Between games, everyone gathered in the lobby, masks off, markers set to safe. I leaned back against a wall while Liam asked if he could borrow some cash. I shifted slightly to pull my wallet out. Something exploded against the wall beside my head. A paintball burst inches from where my face had been moments earlier. Across the room, someone's marker had discharged accidentally when a safety cover snapped loose. The staff kept apologizing. Everyone joked about how lucky I was, but the word lucky started to feel wrong. 2 nights later, we were out drinking near Shoreditch. I tend to walk faster than everyone else, so I kept moving ahead and stopping every so often to wait for the group to catch up. At one point, I decided not to stop. The pub was just ahead, and it was freezing. For some reason, I still don't know why, I stopped anyway and turned back to shout that I'd meet them inside. That's when I heard the engine. A sports car came screaming down the road, completely out of control. It slammed sideways into the wall just ahead of where I'd been walking seconds earlier. The impact sounded like an explosion. Glass and metal scattered across the pavement. If I'd kept walking, I would have been between the car and the building 3 times in 1 week. 3 moments where something should have gone very differently. That night, the dream came. After that, things didn't stop. Not exactly. I started noticing small things. Reflections where nobody stood. The feeling of being watched when walking home at night. Once, I caught myself staring at the end of my street, convinced someone tall was standing beneath the streetlight. When I looked again, nothing was there. I told myself it was stress, adrenaline, my brain trying to make sense of too many close calls. But Liam said something a few days later that I've never been able to explain. We were talking about the accident, about how strange the timing of everything had been. He laughed nervously and said, "It's almost like something kept missing you." I asked what he meant. He shrugged. "I don't know. Just feels like you were supposed to be somewhere else each time." That sentence stayed with me longer than it should have. Because sometimes, late at night, I still remember the dream. The rope going slack, the footsteps on the stairs, and the feeling more than anything else that whatever was chasing me wasn't trying to scare me. It was trying to catch up. Have you ever experienced something you couldn't explain, something you never told anyone because you were afraid they wouldn't believe you? Let me know in the comments.